the arguing and the finger-pointing continues on social media this morning. We're back here on the Gary Harris Show. It is time to go back out on the Bud Light Hotline and welcome in Rodney Orr from Tider Insider TV and TiderInsider.com for his weekly segment. Auburn 48, Alabama 45. Rodney, the game was another classic, and unfortunately for Alabama, as most of these classic Iron Bowls at Jordan-Hare Stadium go, Auburn came out on top. Unbelievable football game, disappointing outcome. I said earlier on the show, though, I thought, and I said it last week, I thought Alabama would be ready to play. I thought Alabama was ready to play. All that matters is the scoreboard. I get that. But 515 yards of total offense. They gassed that defense all day long. 4 touchdown passes for Mac Jones. The defense, I thought at times held up well. 2 pick sixes, a field goal that Auburn was allowed to kick at the end of the first half that shouldn't have been allowed. A missed field goal by Alabama with 2 minutes to go, and then a penalty with 12 men on the field kept Alabama from still having a shot to win that game. So I'm proud of Alabama's effort, even though they came up short. I'm wondering what your take on the game is.
Well, again, I thought a lot of those things I would agree with. Obviously, Mac Jones went in, played his heart out, played a tremendous game. I mean, a guy that played with some skill and with grit. Hated it for him, hated it for Najee Harris, hated it for Jalen Waddle. Had a tremendous game. A lot of guys. I mean, I hate to even start naming names because I do think a lot of guys laid it on the line. I thought Alabama's offensive line, for the most part, played extremely well against a very vaunted defensive front, very talented defensive front. So from an offensive standpoint, just really impressed with Sarkisian and the things that, the offensive unit did. Defensively, no, not as impressed. Missed tackles, not aggressive in the secondary when you had opportunities to make plays, make tackles. It was sloppy, I thought. Again, I realize Auburn only really had 350-something yards, and but it was not a great defensive effort. And again, I say this, be clear, those 2 pick sixes, the field goal opportunity that they got should not have been allowed before halftime. Those were big plays, but still, and there were some offensive issues there with the false starts, undisciplined errors. I just think that Alabama's got to somehow get this defense rectified, from my perspective. But again, I will say, let me be clear, I understand those pick sixes were really big.
Oh, they were huge. I mean, there's no way around it. At the end of the day, that's what cost Alabama. Were the mistakes. 13 penalties, 2 pick sixes, missing a field goal with 30 seconds to go, getting caught with 12 men on the field there at the end of the game. I said last week I thought Alabama would give a great effort, and they did. I said I'd tip my hat to Auburn if they won the game, and I have. But at the end of the day, Gus Malzahn did some things to manipulate that game, and you have to give him credit for that. He got the officials' attention there at the end of the half. He got them to go to replay. He basically got himself a free timeout and a chance to kick a field goal. Then at the end of the game, he duped Alabama. And you can say what you want, whether it's in the spirit of the rules or whether Alabama should have been allowed to get Jalen Waddle off the field or whatever. That cost Alabama a chance to get ball back with a chance to still win the game. So the high school coach, as I've referred to him before, and Nick Saban, who's on HBO with Bill Belichick, I thought Gus Malzahn made some calls in that game that helped directly impact the outcome, and you have to give him credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. He did, and, I kind of wonder about that kick before halftime. Because I remember a few years ago, LSU scored a touchdown, if you remember, in a very similar situation, and they disallowed it. Said something you couldn't get the play off in 1 second, whatever it was, cost Les Miles his job. I don't know. That's another thing I would say, and I'm not blaming this game on the officials at all. Don't get me wrong, but the officiating is horrendous in my opinion. I mean, there's nothing consistent about it. The pass interference calls are really kind of strange to me. Thought there was a couple of calls against Alabama in that regard that were questionable. But, I do think that officiating in the SEC stands some room to be improved.
And I'm assuming they're trying to improve it. But you're right. That field goal should have never been allowed. Donald, we'll get to your phone call in just a second. I want to ask Rodney, about, and I have not even hardly mentioned the missed field goal because I don't want to put it on Joseph Bulovas. It was one play. Alabama could have gotten the ball back. They didn't. But it is ironic that for all the success Alabama has had in building a program, the field goal kicking over time is the worst in the country. It's been ESPN released a stat. Nobody's missed more field goals in the last 10 years than University of Alabama. And, of course, Carlson, who comes from an Alabama family, was 4 for 4, all over 40 yards in the game. In fact, I don't know that anybody's missed a field goal against Alabama this year. And so this is not about Joseph Bulovas, but it is about an ongoing just saga with Alabama and the inability to consistently make field goals, particularly big field goals. Can you put your finger on it, Rodney?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the guy that was going to be the guy, Reichard, got hurt. And, you know, we never know how that would have played out with him. But, you know, Bulovas had a nice year, actually. I think he ended up, 8 of 11 now. Listen, the kid hit a nice field goal, 43 yards earlier in the game. We talked about last week, what were some of the keys? How would people respond in that environment? You know, one of the things we mentioned was Mac Jones. Another thing we mentioned was how would Joseph Bulovas, you know, kick in that atmosphere? And, you know, I think it got to him, obviously, a little bit. He put out that apology statement, which, you know, listen, it's just not his fault. He didn't lose the game. But I do think that, you know, sometimes that atmosphere has gotten to, it seems like, some of the Alabama players, kickers in general. We remember 2013, Kate Foster struggled throughout the game from start to finish. So I don't really know what all those issues are. Again, you talk about, I think, was it 101 field goals Alabama's missed since 2007? I think that was the stat they put out. Can't remember the exact number, but, yeah, they've certainly had some issues. And hopefully, you know, as you move forward, we'll see. Hopefully Will Reichard gets recovered, and, you know, who knows? We'll see what happens.
All right, Rodney, I'm going to keep you for 2 segments just because we got a late start today. But Donald's been holding, so let's take Donald here with Rodney Orr on the Bud Light Hotline. Good morning, Donald.
Good morning, Gary. Rodney, it's good talking to you guys. Hope y'all had a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
And we just got to remember that Saturday, while it's important, it's just a game, and life goes on. But nonetheless, it hurts what happened Saturday. But I will say this, and I'm not going to try not to trash Bulovas, but it is what it is. You know, he missed a key extra point in the national championship game last year that took some momentum away from Alabama at that point in the game. And I'm not sure if it would have made a difference in that game last year, but he did miss an extra point, and he's missed a lot of kicks since he's been here. Going back to last year, yeah, he's improved some this year, but the thing about it is he's also missed some extra points this year. But the thing about it is, you know, he's not very reliable, and but my question is, what can you do about it? But what I will say is this, Rodney, you mentioned the defense. I think Pete Golding is not the defensive coordinator we need here. His was a read and react defense on Saturday. It was not attack and as you mentioned, the tackling was awful. And I also think that the special teams coordinator needs to be looked at very seriously as well. He's been here 2 years. We don't have a punter. Look how many drives Auburn had that had the short field because of our punting game. I mean, and yeah, Jalen Waddle covered up a lot of stuff in the special teams with his ability to return kicks. But our special teams have, for the most part, been awful for the last 2 years. Now, granted, part of that, we mentioned Riker getting hurt. The plan was for him to be the punter and the placement kicker for the year. But the thing about it is we had Skylar DeLong, who's no better than a high school kicker. He's no better than a high school sophomore when it comes to punting. I mean, I've seen high school sophomores kick the ball better than he did. And then you got P. Ryan, he's a walk-on, so, you know, I give him a little slack. But the thing about it is we don't have kickers worth anything, especially in the punting game. And I think Auburn having the short field on Saturday gave them a distinct advantage. And now the defense played lousy, let's be honest. But our special teams really helped in that area as well. And
All right, Donald, we got to move on, but yeah, your points are well taken. Thank you for the phone call. The kicking game, Rodney, we kind of addressed it a little bit there, but it is an area they need to shore up. Now, I thought that P-Ron's done a decent job this year. In fact, he came on Saturday and kicked the football for 3 punts for an average of 45 yards. Let's look at it from this point of view, Rod. The defense gave up some big plays. The offense had 2 pick six. You had a field goal try that shouldn't have been allowed at the end of the half. You had Carlson go 4 for 4 from over 40 yards, one of them 52 that went at the end of the half. Your kicker misses a 30-yarder. You have 13 penalties, tons of mistakes, and it was still a winnable football game. Now, I'm not making any excuses. Scoreboard, man, that's all that matters. But there aren't many teams that could have had all that happen to them and have a chance to win the game. In Auburn, have all that go in their direction and hang on for dear life to win the game. So if that makes me a smiley face, so be it. I think there's a lot to be proud of in the effort that was put forth by that football team on Saturday afternoon, even in a losing cause.
Yeah, I think P-Ron averaged 45 yards a kick in this game. Not too bad.
Not bad at all.
And, I mean, he's put in a situation that, and the caller was correct. Will Reichard was, handling some of the punting too. Skylar DeLong, was actually recruited before Banks got here. Or when he came in, he was already committed. So he was highly touted out of high school. So these kickers, sometimes you get them. Hey, look, J.K. Scott, I mean, that was a guy that lived up to billing. Difficult to find those guys. But, certainly I understand the caller's frustration with, some of the kicks. Bulovas has struggled, with his confidence, I think, and all of those things. Ultimately, it goes back to coaching in terms of, who you put on the field. And whatever it is, he was 7 of 9 heading into this game. Bulovas was. As he said, he probably should have made the kick in his sleep, but it is what it is. But I'll take you a step further here. You talk about all the issues they overcame in the game, and they did overcome a lot of adversity. It shows you how talented the team is. But you look at all the injuries. How many teams could go in there? Would LSU go into Auburn with their backup quarterback, score 45 points, and win the game? Probably not. So that says something there. I think all the issues on defense, a lot of that, we've talked about the injuries they've had. That certainly contributes to some of the issues that they've had. But still, I do think, and I've talked to some people in coaching that, tell me this morning, they said, look, the defensive fits, the fits up front and the gaps, Alabama were just terrible. And it's something that's been ongoing throughout the year. It's not been corrected. They're not fundamentally sound. You watch the defensive backs. Look, I'm not overly impressed with LSU or Auburn's secondaries necessarily. I'm not saying that they were, they're the greatest, but you watch their secondary players, and a lot of times when you see these short throws, these guys aren't getting the extra yards that we see that's happening at times with Alabama. You don't see these Alabama defensive backs aggressively coming up, making strong, sure, confident tackles, laying the wood to them. Not like we've seen in the past. So that's some things that I think have stood out to a lot of people.
10:38, a few more minutes with Rodney Orr. Got to get him out of here. But, Rodney, I guess the question now for Alabama is the future, because this game's over. Nothing you can do about it. We'll find out what bowl game Alabama will play in, and we'll see how many players. There's a lot of talk that some guys may sit it out. But for next season, you mentioned some areas that you think need to be addressed. What's your feeling on next season? The schedule is going to be much tougher than it was this year. For Alabama, can it get back in the playoff? This is the first time ever that it has not played in the college football playoff, so a lot of questions surround this program right now. What's your feeling on next year?
Well, there's a lot of things, I guess, that come to mind. First of all, who comes back and who leaves, which juniors. That'll be an interesting thing. That could certainly change the complexion of the team a little bit, obviously. If you could get a couple of guys to come back that maybe could enhance their draft status the next year, maybe a wide receiver come back. That would be really good. So we'll see what happens there. I think, too, that, Gary, where they are right now, quite honestly, as I look at it, I think that, Nick Saban's got to make sure he's got to first and foremost reevaluate, and this is after recruiting ends, I guess, or this early signing period, reevaluate, the people that are around him and make sure he has the guys that can help him and help this program kind of get back to the top. So I think that's another key factor. But I look at the team overall, and I think the offensive line, again, you've got two tackles, Wills and Leatherwood, that could declare early. We'll see what happens there. But I think still the offensive line has a chance to be really, really good. I think Kyle Flood's done an outstanding job with that group this year. I think they have a lot of potential for next year, and that's where it all starts. Running back, even though I expect Najee to leave, should be really strong. Obviously, Brian Robinson back, but I'm really high on Trey Sanders, Keelan Robinson. Jerome Ford should probably be back. Then you've got, some incoming freshmen, Kyle Edwards and Roydell Williams, who I think are going to be tremendous players. A wide receiver, depends on if they can get one of those guys back. But, obviously Waddle's back. John Mechie is a guy that I think has a lot of promise. People not talking much about Xavier Williams, but I think he's a young player that could be really good as a receiver. Defensively, they've got a ton of young talent up front, in terms of those defensive linemen. Hopefully they can hold on to the ones they've got committed that are coming in, because I think they could certainly contribute as well. You're going to have to probably replace, certainly Anthony Jennings outside. And I guess, we'll have to just wait and see if Terrell Lewis is going to go ahead and go. So you'd probably have to replace him too. And, some guys in the secondary. But overall, I think that, they've got a chance to be really good. Now, I didn't mention Tua. I expect he will probably go. Mac Jones showed that he certainly has some talent. There was one game, but I think he certainly showed that he's, got the talent to compete strongly for that job. But, I think Talia and Bryce Young, the incoming freshman, who I think is an extraordinarily talented player, he'll be in the mix as well. And then, Paul Tyson. So, we'll see how it all unfolds.
All right, real quickly, Robin's been waiting to get through and talk with you, Rodney. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning, Gary and Rodney. Roll Tide and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Rodney just kind of touched on what I was wanting to ask about. But my big thing is, I think year after year after year, I don't think any program in the country has to face the amount of juniors that leave their program. And I just feel like that this has become, like, it's kind of finally caught up to us, because we're constantly having to rebuild a young team. And I'm just hoping at some point that, I know that these kids, I don't know the backgrounds that they come from, but at some point we need some juniors to stay. And I just kind of wanted y'all's thoughts on that, and Roll Tide.
All right, thank you, Robin. Yeah, good call. Rodney, it's kind of the way the program's built. Nick Saban's designed it this way. We want to get the best players. We want to develop them, and if they're good enough to go to the NFL after their junior year, then we want to support them in that. I do think there have been some guys that have gone sooner than they should have, and there's no doubt that losing great football players more quickly than some other programs impacts your team, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question about it. Then you've had the injuries on top of that, and you've lost some players, for other reasons. For example, Ayabi Anoma could have been a difference maker. Again, there was off the field issues, but you combine all of these things together, and you've lost a lot of players. And the fact that Alabama right now is 10-2, in spite of all of those things, is big. But I think too, Gary, that the coaching turnover, what it's been, is been very hurtful as well, because I'm not sure you can always replace the things that you have with the guys who understand your program. And again, I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody, and specifically, I'm just saying, you're not always bringing in guys that knows what it takes, understands the process. Nick Saban always says, know what to do, know how to do it, know why it's important to do it that way. And when you constantly bring in different people, it's made it difficult. So, I go back to what I said earlier. I think internally and on the field coaching, Alabama, Nick Saban really needs to make sure he's got the right people behind the scenes that are helping set up these recruiting things that they do in recruiting, and also, the coaching staff as a whole. I think he's got to make sure that he's got the right people that can help Alabama get back to where they were.
All right, Rodney. And Larry, we'll just have to get to you on the other side. Larry from Florence. Because Rodney's got to get going. Tighter and cider.
Hey, if you want to take him, go ahead.
Okay,
Gary.
if you got time. Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead then. I thought you had to get going. All right, Larry, you're on with Rodney Orr. Go ahead.
Hey, first of all, I just want to say whoever picked out Ozzy Osbourne Crazy Train really had this Iron Bowl and this whole season, as a matter of fact, dead to rights on a song check. This Iron Bowl, I mean, there were just too many mistakes, and that's what it all came down to was the mistakes, and that's what people have been saying. When that pick six, when Mac threw that pick six that hit Najee in the back, my first reaction wasn't against him. My first reaction was, who on earth called that play?
Yeah, Larry, that's a good point, Rodney. I'm glad Larry brought that up. You just got a couple pass interference calls. You got a 1st and goal there at the 2-yard line, 2.5-yard line, whatever it was. You got Najee Harris, who's been running physical all day. You got 4 downs to score. I'm with Larry. What in the heck?
Yeah, I mean, that's a call that you could always look at. And the thing was, and again, there was a missed assignment, and had he been able to, Mac should have probably thrown that ball somewhere else, gotten rid of it. Or,
he got pressured, indeed.
But yeah, he got pressured. It was just the guy missed a block.
Yeah, the fullback just didn't even take the end there. That's what happened.
But I will say this about what Larry's saying about the mistakes and all that. Clemson, tons of mistakes. The LSU, tons of mistakes in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
All these things. Auburn, these are the 3 best teams they played, and they've lost all 3.
That's right.
Of those games. Okay, so they've had a lot of undiscipline that we've seen, and you have to ask the question. I mean, has Alabama forgotten how to win? I mean, you can beat the teams that you're vastly superior to, but right now, and that's why I go back to saying, does Nick Saban, and again, I want to be clear, I'm not blaming coaches. I'm just saying, does he have the people in place? He had to make a lot of changes last year. I think some of them were needed. Again, it looks like defensively, and I like Sal Sinceri, I like Charles Kelly. I think those guys are great coaches, but as I look at it as a whole, I mean, is he getting the most out of all those other guys? Are they doing what they need to do to help Alabama? And I'm talking about the coaching staff as a whole, and even, like I said, in the recruiting office, are you getting everything that you need for this program to be where it's been? And I think those are things that you have to evaluate, but it looks like to me that Alabama, in a way, has forgotten how to win.
Larry, good call. We got to let Rodney go. Thank you for calling in there from Florence. And Rodney, at the end of the day, that you said it, and I said it at the top of the show. Mistakes. If Alabama plays a clean game, they probably won that game by 2 or 3 touchdowns. That's just the reality of it. But I
got it, Gary. I kind of figured it up in my mind. And again, I'm taking Auburn deserved to win the game. They played well. I'm not. But if you look at that game, Alabama probably should have won that game 55-31. That would be pretty much how that game should have probably ended up.
Yeah, I'm with you. And mistakes, and they've got to be addressed. It is what it is. Football, somebody wins, somebody loses. And boy, in this state, when you're on the losing end, and that fan base they're gonna revel in it for 363 days or however much time is left, and all you can do is get them back next year here at Bryant-Denny. TiderInsider.com. I have not been on it the last couple of days, Rodney, but I'm sure it's been lively. Yeah,
probably about like your radio show. It's going nonstop. And again, TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, Gary, and a lot of information there on a lot of exchange there on the forum. And we're going to have some recruiting stuff coming up here very quickly and so forth. But again, TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year.
And Rodney, just before we close, Auburn fined $250K again for fans rushing the field at the Iron Bowl. I continue to say this needs to stop, but it's clearly fining them isn't going to do it. One of these days, there's going to be an incident. I'm telling you. Emotions are high. Fans running on the field, waving their shakers in players' faces. Some point, there's going to be an incident, and it's going to put a stop to it. It's a shame that it's going to have to come to that, because obviously they're not going to keep their fans off the field when they win that game. Just a quick thought on that.
They're going to have to do something.
Doesn't happen anywhere else.
That out. Yeah, they're going to have to do something. I don't know if that means if you're going to have to surround your field, and I don't know. I didn't see, but surround the field with security somehow to keep people out. I don't know.
Well, they don't care to keep them out. They enjoy paying the fine, and they're close to $1 million in fines now for rushing the field against Alabama. But it's just part of their tradition. Thanks a lot, Rod.
Okay, buddy. Take care.